A lot of these people can survive if they get proper care quickly, and we can stop the epidemic and let it burn itself out if we can isolate everybody that's infected.
This epidemic is going to get worse before it gets better, but right now, the world still has an opportunity to save countless lives. We are going to keep leading in this effort.
You are someone with a history of domestic violence yourself. You've even been to jail for it. Why should fans root for you?
Everything has been allegations. Nothing has been proven. That's life.
That girl who broke your heart in high school is sorry. She realizes now that she let you slip through her fingers. As it turns out, you were the best thing that ever happened to her. Gary Doyle Show.
Well, thank you for that. It's the best thing you ever happened to her. Nice to know that 40 years after the fact when you thought you were just a heel. JD here. Good to have you on board. All aboard. Phone number for the program. Want to be a part of the show? Give us a shout. 800-449-8255. 800-449-TALK. Talk. If you no feely likey, no talky, you can email me, Jerry@epictimes.com, the digital home of the program, with the poll questions up there for you today. Interesting conversation at the bottom of the hour with Kay Heimowitz from the Manhattan Institute. There's new studies out that say marriage is just passé for many, many people in this country. They're just not important. Just not high on their to-do list. And the women are especially frustrated because the one thing that they want most out of a man is hard to find these days: a job. Ladies, why do you set your standards so high? Really? You want a guy with a job and shave and have a good relationship with his mom and dad? You're asking an awful lot. Anyway, it's an interesting group of studies that we have to go into about how people are putting off marriage, and in particular, millennials are putting off marriage, 18 to 33-year-olds, but they're not afraid of commitment because they are the most tattooed generation in American history. Kay Heimowitz at the bottom of the hour. Peter Suderman's going to join us later in the program from Reason Magazine. Obama said this was going to be the most transparent administration in history. He's got a great new piece at Reason about how the White House is attempting to manipulate the press corps into editing their stories so that they can control the narrative. I guess they're open as long as you're saying what it is they want you to say. And Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer going to join us later in the program to talk about our fight against ISIS. Are we fighting to win or just not to lose? With regard to the marriage question, it's the poll question up there for you today at epictimes.com. Which trait do you think is most important to the success of a marriage? 4% say physical attraction. 17% say emotional availability. Yuck. 26% say financial stability. And 53% say a sense of humor. I guess when you're broke and you're emotionally unavailable and you're financially unstable, if you can be the funny guy, I guess you got a shot. You can post your answer up there at epictimes.com. Take a look at our podcast network lineup. Myself, John Justice, and Robert Scott Bell to start. A couple of big names coming up for you to be adding to that in the next couple of weeks. And also you can sign up for the top stories of the day, delivered to your email inbox each and every day. Stories you need to know, news you need to know, solutions for you right there in your inbox. And we will not lease, sell, or share your information. And we're pretty secure, right? From what I understand there, Brad? Like, we don't have to worry about the Home Depot breaches or the Target breaches or the needless markup breaches.
No, not at all.
Right. Hey, interesting reaction to the news today that Eric Holder, our Attorney General, is stepping down. Reading a lot of comments and kind of sampling what many in the conservative/Republican arena are saying about him and all of the evil, nefarious, racially divisive things that he did since he was confirmed in February of 2009. And a lot of people are saying, good riddance, don't let the Attorney General door hit you on the ass. I'm on the other side of that. By the way, Eric Holder was confirmed 75-21. And some of the Republicans that have a problem with Eric Holder, like John McCain, voted to confirm the very same Eric Holder that they now have a problem with. That's a sidebar. Now, Holder's going to stick around until a successor is confirmed. They point out in the Wall Street Journal that Mr. Holder was the first black attorney general. Okay. And discussions about the planned departure, finalized those Labor Day meeting at the White House with the president and the AG. Now, a lot of people are taking a lot of time today to beat up on Eric Holder. A lot of people in talk radio, the white, right, and uptight people. And they're going through the litany of crimes against the country that Eric Holder, and then there's a bunch of things that he's done that are just way off the reservation. Unconstitutional, unlawful, racially divisive. We got all that. But here's the point. He didn't care what conservatives and Republicans had to say when he was the Attorney General. Why would he care now? Obama didn't care what conservatives and Republicans said about his Attorney General when Holder was the Attorney General. So why would the president care now? They didn't care then. They don't care now. But here's something to keep in mind. We pretty much have a handle on Eric Holder. We pretty much know which way he's going to go. We got a pretty good idea of how he thinks and what his agenda is and what ideology he's beholden to. Obama's got 2 years left. What attorney general that wants to really make a statement or have some impact or do the right thing for an extended period of time is going to sign on for a 2-year deal with President Obama? What I'm worried about is that the next stooge that Obama brings up for confirmation and the Senate confirms is going to be worse than Eric Holder, because this new guy or gal is going to have absolutely nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. In 2 years, I'm out of here. In the meantime, I can do things and say things and go places and raise my profile, and then I can go get a job as a lobbyist. I can work on K Street. Or I can get into some think tank, or I could go out on the lecture circuit, and I can give speechifyings, and I can do all kinds of things to make tons of money, or go into private practice. I can make a ton of money after I've used the position of the Attorney General. And what better way to raise your profile than to do really crazy, wacky, unconstitutional, outside the rule of law stuff to get your name in the papers and talked about on talk radio. So as much as the conservatives and the Republicans in talk radio and a lot of people on Fox are, taking the time to vilify Eric Holder, we already know him. We already know what he's going to do. I doubt that there's much that he could do at this point where you'd go, ooh, didn't see that one coming. But be careful about who the next nominee is. And to the Senate, who voted 75-21 to confirm Eric Holder, all the Democrats, by the way, voted for Holder. What a shocker. But there ain't 75 Democrats in the Senate. And I just love how these Republicans, after they go to confirm someone like Jughead John Kerry or doofus Secretary of State, then take the time to beat him up after they were the ones who confirmed him 94-3. So you have to kind of keep track of these people because they think that you do everything in pencil, or they do everything in pencil, and it can be easily erased and forgotten, but not so the case. We're putting together a photo gallery that we're going to put up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Jerry Doyle Show. CNN, and I found this interesting for CNN, has a great compilation of military hardware, ordnance, stuff that we've used to go after ISIS. And when you take a look at what we're throwing at them, there's one picture of the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier. There's a picture of this in the Straits of Hormuz in April of this year. And it's a front-on shot of this floating city with 5,500 soldiers and aircraft out the wazoo. I would have to think that if I was a member of ISIS, I'd look at this picture and go, rethinking, possibly. I'm thinking this might not be the chosen path that I want to go down. Then they have another picture of a guided missile cruiser, the USS Philippine Sea. You take a look at that and you go, the F-22 from underneath, the Raptor, with the bomb bay doors open. You look at that and you go, got to rethink this. F-16, fully loaded, getting ready to strike ISIS targets. Traveling at 1,500 miles an hour, Mach 2, at altitude, fully loaded up. You see that picture and you go, not really. And then we've also got the Tomahawk missiles being launched from these ships, from the Navy-guided missile destroyer USS Barry. You look at this stuff and you go, no. The guided missile destroyer Burke, the A-15E Strike Eagle. You look at these photos, the B-1B Lancer bomber. You look at these and you go, if I'm ISIS, I'm going to rethink that. So we're going to put these together for you. We'll put it up on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Jerry Doyle Show. We've got more news about the U.S. and our Arab allies trying to sap the financial strength of ISIS by pummeling their oil refineries. And the Islamic State has decided to counter all of that ordnance, that hardware, that muscle that I just talked about with propaganda videos. That's all they have, folks. I mean, when you take a look at the picture of that aircraft carrier, the George H.W. Bush, when you look at that, and then you think of ISIS or ISIL or the Islamic State or Al-Shabaab or Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, they don't stand a chance. And in fact, in one of the cities that we've been bombing, where the ISIS thugs have been holed up, supposedly blending in amongst the civilians, about an hour after our last bombing, 20 carloads and truckloads of ISIS militants were loaded up and headed out of town as quickly as they possibly could. That's what we can do when we decide to do it, and thank God we're finally doing something.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
So much stuff. I found so much cool stuff. Oh, you know how I always say we're mad as hell and we are going to take it some more? Well, apparently we're mad as hell, and a lot of us are not taking it anymore with regard to air travel and frequent flyer programs. And people in huge numbers are starting to jettison brand allegiance because the airlines, in many's opinion, is not returning the favor or the loyalty that we show them. We've got your medical records worth more to hackers than your credit card. We got, it's just all over the place. We had so much stuff to get to on the program today. I'm glad you're with us. 800-449-8255 is the number. Quick break. Stick with us. We'll be right back. This hour of Jerry Doyle Live is brought to you by Optima Tax Relief, who can introduce you to the new IRS Fresh Start program. Call 800-714-9259.
Jerry Doyle Show.
So what's going on with marriage in America? Huh? I ask you that question. A record 20% of American adults, 42 million people, have never married. Pew Research Center, looking at one poll. They say it's caused by several factors. Later ages for marriage, more people living together, raising children out of wedlock. 23% of men, 17% of women, 25 and older, have never been married. Widening gap between the sexes. In 1960, the 17% of men was 10%. The 23% of men was 10%, and the 17% of women was 8%. They say looking at long-term financial security is one of the reasons why people are afraid to commit to the institution of marriage. I would have to think that back in the days when you were going across the country in a covered wagon and the Native Americans were on the warpath, I'm not so sure there was a whole lot of stability then. And I would have to think that the conditions today would be a little bit more conducive to the prospects of long-term stability than like going across Death Valley in a covered wagon in the early 1800s. But now they're like, no, man, it's just too unpredictable. The sexual revolution of the 1960s, they cite, the rising numbers of women attending college and entering the workforce have softened attitudes on marriage, the decline of religious institutions, the growing importance of higher education. But a major factor that everyone gets back to is the economy. I just don't have the money to get married. Do you believe that? There's something that's going on here. There's something that's happening. Doesn't make sense. By the way, the median age for first marriage for women, 27, 29 for men. That's up about 6 years apiece from 1960. But I keep hearing about how it's oh so difficult today. It's just horrible today. The job prospects. And I understand in a lot of ways that incomes have not really moved the needle that much since the 1980s. I mean, you can take a look at the income statistics. Hourly wages for men, 25.54, have actually declined 20% in real terms since 1980. But still, to me, it gets to a place where we've lost our edge as a nation. We've become risk adverse. We've become commitment adverse. We want guarantees. And I think it has a lot to do with the creep of government, where we used to take risks for ourselves, where we used to set out on our own, where we used to try and fend for ourselves. It seems like the benevolence of government is infantilizing adults to an even later age in life, to the point that unless they know with certainty that this is what it's going to be, and that I have this job and I have this much money and I will be able to buy this house and I will have those cars and then I'll be able to bring those children into the world, that only then, when you have the absolute guarantees that everything's the way that you think it should be, then and only then can you make the ultimate commitment to someone else. What's going on with marriage, folks? Help me out here. 800-449-8255 is the number. Kay Heimowitz from the Manhattan Institute, author of Manning Up, How the Rise of Women is Turning Men into Boys, when we get back.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show. Jerry Doyle Show.
I love weddings. I just decided in 1997 it was best if I wasn't in them. Now, with regard to the institution of marriage, which I'm a firm believer in at 58 years old, there's more and more studies that are coming out and just saying that people are just saying, not interested, not now, maybe later. And a lot of people are blaming it on the economy, that there's no economic certainty, and the difficulties of money today is forcing people to stay away from getting married. Our guest, Kay Heimowitz, is a William E. Simon Fellow at the Manhattan Institute and contributing editor of City Journal. She lives in Brooklyn, and I grew up in Brooklyn, and there was only one family in Brooklyn that was rich, and that was the Keenans, and he had a plumbing company. And rich by standards that today would probably be not what we would say would be rich. Most everybody that I knew in Flatbush in the 50s and 60s, they weren't related to Warren Buffett. And money was a struggle. But everybody on my block was married. So what's going on with marriage today? It seems as if maybe the money excuse is indicative of something that's much more complicated in why people are skipping the altar. Kay Heimowitz, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
What's your take on all of this this deferred commitment that especially the millennials seem to have? Right.
Well, the age of marriage has been going up steadily since about 1970. So that's nothing new. It's now about 29. The average age of marriage for men is about 29, and for women it's about 27. But what seems to be happening is that there are a lot of people who are never marrying, or rather are putting off marriage so long that they are already parents by the time they do get married, if they do get married. And marriage and childbearing have become very disconnected. This is actually only true for less educated Americans. Among college-educated Americans, it's still far more common to find women and men marrying before they have children, and they're fairly likely to get married. However, you're quite right. There does seem to be a change of attitude among millennials. It's hard to say, and I don't think the report that we're going to be talking about, the Pew report, adequately analyzes this. It's hard to say whether that's because they're not married yet and therefore can't project themselves into that future, or whether there really is a big shift going on in the way people are thinking about their lives.
Your last book, Manning Up, How the Rise of Women Has Turned Men into Boys, you talk about the dramatic effect of the current generation of young men. The traditional roles of a family man and a provider has been turned upside down. And is that a part of it, too? Is that, I know women are from Mars and men are from Venus, and we're supposed to get in touch with our feminine side, and I got all that. But it seems as if that there has been a degradation of what would be the perception of what the role of a man in society is, or man in a marriage, or man in a home, or man as a father or a parent. And is that something that has kind of watered down the DNA of what would bring men to want to make those kind of commitments, regardless of whether they have the job that they want, or live in the house that they want, or drive the car that they hope to drive?
Right. I think these things are very hard to untangle. There's no question that there has been a big decrease in the percentage of men at their prime working ages who are actually employed. This is particularly true for men who have a high school degree or less. And those men are far more likely to be unmarried than men who have a high school degree or more. So there's no question it has something to do with the ability to get a stable and reliable job. However, it's hard, as I say, it's hard to untangle. Is it one of the reasons that men are leaving the labor force because they don't feel they need to be there in order to support a family anymore? I mean, after all, that is actually one of my theories. It's very, very controversial, but I do think that when men grow up, boys growing into men who know that women can take care of themselves, and that they, the men, are really kind of not needed and not essential to family life, and I think we give that message to them in multiple ways, then what's the point? They don't like school. They don't like school. They don't like their boss. They don't. It's more fun to hang out with their friends if they can possibly manage. And I think their aspirations really decline under those circumstances.
I was looking at this study that says that young American adults ages 18 to 33 less likely to own a home, have a full-time job, own a car, or even use a credit card than older American generations were when they were the same age. They say that this is a ding to our economy and a millennial aversion to marriage. There's a whole lot of excuses that they make, but isn't this really about stepping up? And what, to your point about how you say, that what you just talked about was controversial. To who? Who's that controversial to? I mean, if there's no need for men to be men and there's no need for guys to provide, I mean, it's stuff like I hear all the time from younger women that when they go on a date, the guy doesn't either want to or can't afford to pay for dinner. I mean, call me a Neanderthal, and many have, but I still hold to the institutions of if I'm asking you to go to dinner, I'm paying for dinner. If I'm going to pick you up at your house, I'm going to open your car door. I mean, that's Neanderthalish to many in today's society, Ms. Heimowitz.
Yes, I'm afraid that it is. Now, to be fair, it's very likely that a young single woman who doesn't have children will be earning more than the man she's going out with. So then the man may understandably raise the question, why should I be paying? So I think that there's still a way to sort of figure that out. I mean, it could be that some of those rules don't apply anymore, or maybe the man pays for the first date, but not necessarily the follow-up dates, or who knows. I don't know exactly how that should be worked out. But the point is that we've never before had a situation where men and women are meeting as economic equals, and it has change things for people, and in many cases confuse them greatly. They're not sure what the script is. What is it they're supposed to be doing? And I would say that that's also affecting men when it comes to marriage, because it's not clear to them what their role is. As I said before, as a married man, they're not to be a provider. They're not essentially a provider. Interestingly enough, in this new report that that is leading to a lot of discussion today, from Pew Research Center, it shows that about 71% of women who never married women put a man with a reliable job, steadily employed man, as one of their highest prerequisites before they marry. Well, it's interesting because men only about 40% of men say the same thing about women. So we're equals, but we're not equals, and it's all very confused.
And that number, women, high percentage of women that want someone with a steady job, very important. 70% of men share the same views about raising children being more important than finding someone with a steady job. Most people would think it would be just the opposite, that the guy would be more concerned about the money and the woman would be more concerned about the kids, but the woman seems to be more concerned about the money and the guys seem to be more concerned about the kids.
Yeah. I think that, look, some of this is being driven, a lot of this is being driven by a bum economy. I don't want to understate that problem. And if you look at the trend lines that they show in the report, the marriage rates have gone down with the recession, but and particularly among men with less than a high school degree. But those trends have been going on for a long time, for decades now. So I don't think we can only chalk it up to the recession. It's made things worse, but it doesn't explain everything.
Yeah, but, Ms. Heimowitz, when you're going across the plains of Kansas in 1800s and you're in a covered wagon, they would get married, Yeah. I mean, how much stability was there then? How much financial security was there then? What creature comforts did they have then relative to what we have now? And I think also to a certain degree that we've gotten soft as a society, that we used to have our elbows out and we used to paint in bold colors and I call it the Beijing of America, not Beijing, China, but the Beijing, the color of America, where it just all seems like, well, yeah, there's no real clear definitions. There's no rights and wrongs. There's no do's and don'ts. There's no black and white. There's no up or down. It's whatever we kind of just do to have this oozing blob of America just chalk off another day on the calendar.
Well, I think when it comes to marriage, there is a lot of ambiguity and ambivalence out there, and those messages get passed on to the next generation. You're quite right that Americans used to be much poorer than they are today, and even among our poorest populations, they're better off than they would have been 50 years ago, and yet people still married. What's happened is that people think about marriage rather differently. They think of it as much more optional. They don't think of it as necessary in order to have children. That, to me, is one of the major and misunderstood changes in the way people are thinking about marriage, and a huge problem for society. It's the reason that we have so many children growing up without their fathers and in very unstable environments.
And is that something that's trending worse? Is it plateauing? Was it a fad?
No, not a fad. No, it went up and up and up till about 4 years ago when it plateaued. And it's a little unclear now what's going to happen. Again, when you talk to millennials, they're much more or much less likely to say it matters whether you're married when you have children. So that's a source of concern. Then when you add the economy and the lack of male labor force participation, that's very worrisome. On the other hand, it could just be that they're young, and that when they get to into their 30s, it will begin to seem clearer to them why it is a good idea to wait till you're married to have children. It's very hard to predict. People love to predict, but it's very hard to do so.
The cocooning of kids. Does helicopter parenting have something to do with this? In we don't let kids run around in unsupervised playtime anymore. You can't ride a bike without a helmet. You have to put an RFID chip in your kid. They have to check in by cell phone. We got GPS tracking. I mean, is there the infantilization of adulthood that is, let's just say, maturity delayed or deferred?
Well, helicoptering has its problems, and we could talk about that another time. But I don't think it has much to do with what the trends we're talking about here. Remember that not marrying is much more common among low-income individuals, men and women, and those are people who didn't tend to be brought up by helicopter parents. Helicopter parents are middle class and upper middle class. And those are the ones whose kids are marrying. So I think it would be very difficult to try to prove that there's some correlation there.
Got it. Kay Heimowitz is with us, the William Simon Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, contributing editor of City Journal. Manhattan Institute's website is manhattan-institute.com and .org, right? And her book, Manning Up, How the Rise of Women Has Turned Men into Boys. What about this, Ms. Heimowitz, when you look at how now I think a perception of adulthood is 26 because of the ability to carry your kids on your health insurance until they're 26. I think my generation would think that adulthood hit at 18. Maybe the 20 years younger than me might be 21. But now it seems that might be the benchmark for when you're supposed to be separated from the nest, kicked out of the nest. And that 26 is the day, the age at which you start to look at yourself much differently as someone who was under the roof of the parents and then out on your own.
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's a much more gradual process than it used to be. Now, to give kids some credit today, remember that the demands of working in this economy now are very, very different than they used to be. It's much more essential to get an education, to get higher education, in order to have a stable middle-class life. That delays adulthood because you're in school. It's much harder to get a foot on that bottom rung of the ladder, of the career ladder, and then it takes a longer time to move up, especially in this current recession. So I think there are a lot of economic reasons that kids are taking longer to grow up, and I don't fault them entirely for that. I think parents can over coddle under those circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the other hand, it really is quite different, and I think it's a mistake to think, well, why can't they grow up the way we did? They can't because the job market is very different than it used to be.
Good stuff. Kay Heimowitz, thanks for joining us on the program. Keep doing all the good stuff you do there at the Manhattan Institute. Once again, the website is manhattan-institute.org. Her book, Manning Up, How the Rise of Women Has Turned Men into Boys. Thanks very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jerry.
Always a pleasure. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
The Jerry Doyle Show. This is the Jerry Doyle Show.
I just think we've gotten less edgy, folks. I really do. Adults 18 to 33, less likely to own a home, have a full-time job, own a car, use a credit card, get married. Aversion to marriage. Interesting write-up here about the complaints and excuses, including marriage. Column in the Washington Post by Catherine Rampell. She cites numerous polls insisting that millennials want to engage in all the social and economic trappings of adulthood, but they just can't afford it. The column is filled with the kind of self-pity that actually acts as damning evidence of their culpability in their own self-destruction. Because the funny thing about taking a risk is that you just have to do it. Everything from marriage to home buying to starting a business can be scary, and there are always a million arguments against taking the plunge, and that's true in good economic times as well as bad. I just, again, in many aspects, as a country, we've gotten as edgy as a marble. I was spending some time last night with my bestbequest.com account. You know, the digital vault. It's like a safe deposit box, and it's a roadmap that they give you for all your important stuff. And I was going through documents that I was uploading to bestbequest.com, stuff that I don't want to lose and I want to be able to have access to. And I'm holding here in my hand a 60, how old is this letter? From 1945, from my dad, when he was in the Navy, World War II. And it's just a phenomenal letter. I don't have time to get into it right now, but I'd like to share some with you a little bit later in the program. It's dated May 21st, 1945, about how when he was on a destroyer escort and they were chasing a Jap sub and they blew it up. I mean, priceless document. But I also found something from 1967, August 7, that he sent to me. Dear Jerry, I knew you were anxious to see your new brother, so I thought I would send these pictures as the first opportunity. He's a cute little fellow, don't you think? How about those skinny legs? I thought maybe the stork was here and the baby flew away. That's a joke, son. How are you enjoying camp? Are you having a good time? We sure do miss you at home. The weather's been bad, rainy, damp. Don't forget to brush your teeth. So far this week, I've been too busy to take the boys out for baseball practice, so you haven't missed much. Don't forget to brush your teeth. The baby is sounding off for his 2 o'clock bottle now. Nana's getting it set up. He sure is a hungry guy, like someone else I know. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Don't forget us poor civilians back here in the rotten city. Drop a card if you get a chance and let us know how you're enjoying yourself. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Please excuse my using this typewriter, but I know that you have difficulty with my magnificent penmanship. Don't forget to brush your teeth. Love, Dad. P.S. Mom sends her love and asked me to remind you to brush your teeth. You know how mothers are. This goes on bestbequest.com. We got a free account for you. Promo code Doyle. Bestbequest.com, promo code Doyle. Make sure this kind of stuff that you have is protected.
Jerry Doyle Show.
A lot of these people can survive if they get proper care quickly, and we can stop the epidemic and let it burn itself out if we can isolate everybody that's infected.
This epidemic is going to get worse before it gets better, but right now, the world still has an opportunity to save countless lives. We are going to keep leading in this effort.
You are someone with a history of domestic violence yourself. You've even been to jail for it. Why should fans root for you?
Everything has been allegations. Nothing has been proven. You know, that's life.
That girl who broke your heart in high school is sorry. She realizes now that she let you slip through her fingers. As it turns out, you were the best thing that ever happened to her.
Jerry Doyle Show.
All right, here we go. Hour 2 of the big show. JD here. Good to have you on board. Appreciate when you carve out some time to join us on the program, the one where intellectual anarchy is encouraged and nurtured for now. ... Insert ominous tone. You want to be a part of the program? You can give us a phone call at 800-449-8255, or you can email me, jerry@epictimes.com. And boy, have you emailed me in the last 15 minutes since my conversation with Kay Heimowitz from the Manhattan Institute about the Institute of Marriage and why people are putting off getting married, waiting to get married. And I started the segment with her by saying, I believe in marriage. I'm a big fan of weddings. I just decided that I had to stop being in them since 1997. And I've gotten a bunch of emails, all from women folk, with basically the same question. How come you're not married, Jerry? Answer: it's the same reason I don't bowl. I'm not good at it.
I thought it was the shoes.
It's just, there's some things you're good at and some things you're not. I've tried to bowl. I got past the whole thing about the guy doing the psh into the shoes where you're putting those things on your feet that these sweaty, nasty feet have been in. Over and over and over and over and over. And I found the right ball with the right grip. I got that. It's just not me. Bowling just isn't me. Marriage just isn't me. Just that, I was reading this interview with Derek Jeter, plays for the New York Yankees. I think tonight, by the way, is his last home game as a New York Yankee, if it's not a rainout. But he's 40 years old. He's dating a gal that's 24. And a lot of people seem to think that she's the one. There's a lot of rumors, New York Post, page 6, a lot of the tabloids, that she's the one. Of all the girls that Derek Jeter has dated, and there's been quite a few, I think he gives them a gift basket when they get together or break up, one of the two. There's something out there.
Consolation prize.
His consolation prize.
Sorry you didn't win.
Tell them what they won, Don Pardo.
It's the Derek Jeter
Thanks for
home
spending
game.
some quality time with Derek here. Here's an autographed baseball and a basket of goodies. Say goodnight, Gracie. Say goodnight. And he said that he's 40 years old now, and baseball will soon be in his rearview mirror. He'll be a Hall of Famer, guaranteed. I mean, Derek Jeter, what is it? His 3,000th hit was a home run to win the game. I mean, the guy's definitely going to the Hall of Fame. But what he said in the interview was that he was too selfish while he was playing baseball, and that baseball was his commitment, and that he was not willing to compromise his selfishness because of his commitment to his sport. And now supposedly this gal is the right gal, but she's just the right gal at the right time. Probably some of the others that he had dated in the past would have been the right gal if it was the right time. But a lot of people were beating him up for being, quote, selfish. What are you talking about? This guy's playing for the New York Yankees, Major League Baseball, one of the greatest players of all time. And he decided that while I have an opportunity, while this window of opportunity is open, I'm going to do everything that I have to do, need to do, and want to do to be the best at what it is that I do. And he decided to not make a relationship his priority. I have the ultimate respect for him for that. That he said, this is what's important to me. Because if it was really about his commitment to baseball, but he tried to half-ass it in a relationship or a marriage, sooner or later it's going to show. And it's the same thing if you decide to half-ass anything, sooner or later it's going to show. But now that he's done with baseball, at least on the field, with spring training and all of the time commitments that go into it, now he's like, okay, I'm looking forward to a new chapter in my life. I'm looking forward to getting married. I'm looking forward to having kids. And good for him for deciding to do it the right way. So to all the women that are wanting to know why I'm not married, I'm selfish. That's it. I'm a selfish person. I like my day my way. That's it. It's that simple. And, sometimes I joke about a commitment level. It's like the National Guard. 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. That's the commitment level of the National Guard. And when you're committed to something or you're passionate about something and you have something that you're spending a ton of time on because you truly believe in it, like I do with EpicTimes.com, the digital home of the program. Had the idea for this about 2 years ago, started put it to paper about 18 months ago, put a beta site out about a year ago. We got a full-blown CEO, CFO, CTO. The company's really growing. I started working on Epic Times this morning at 2 o'clock in the morning. I fell asleep last night on the couch at about 8:15. At 2 o'clock this morning, I was working on Epic Times, and I was prepping for the show, and I was working on Epic Times, and I was prepping for the show, and I was working on time. And I don't want to have to not be able to do that. And if that's selfish, so be it. But that's not to say that at some point in time, there won't be something different. How much time do you have left, Jerry? You're 58 years old. I'm halfway to 116. I'm middle age. I'm incorporating all the knowledge I get from Robert Scott Bell and the healthy effects that I get from Life Change Tea. I got a lot of living still left to do. But I don't want it to be this slow grind to nothingness. I was talking to the CEO of Epic Times, Elaine Kunda, about this, about aging and about health and about how we live our lives and what it is that we're doing for our health present and our health future. And normal batteries, like you have a flashlight, right? You got D batteries in there, and now the new LED flashlights have double A's in them, which is kind of cool. But if you watch a battery, just, the horizontal plane that a battery goes across, and then it has a slow degradation on a curve until, boom, nothing. Saft batteries, when I was flying back in the days of the Wright brother, the Saft battery was the battery that was used. And a Saft battery would go across on a horizontal plane, fully charged. Fully charged, fully charged, fully charged, fully charged, fully charged, fully charged, fully charged. And then it would get to the end of the battery life, and it would just drop like a rock. It would have the glide ratio of a bank vault. It would make a 90-degree turn and head straight down, and you were out of power. And that's kind of how I want to live my life. I don't want to have this slow degradation to nothingness where things are breaking down and it's all getting lousy and you're not feeling that good, but you're just extending it a little more and a little more and a little more and a little more, and then eventually your light goes out. No, I want to run hard, doing exactly what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it with, to the degree that I want to do it, and then when the Saft battery life is over, boom, you fall off the cliff and you call it a day. That's, to some people, selfish. You know what's more selfish? And again, this is to the women that are kind of like pounding me a little bit on this. It's more selfish to get into a relationship that you're not fully committed to than it is to not get into a relationship because you're committed to something else. To kind of just, okay, let's just do this. Passion overcomes talent more times than not. And it's the same thing in business as it is in life. If you're passionate about something, if you're passionate about someone, if you're passionate about some nonprofit, if you're passionate about some cause, there could be people out there that went to Dartmouth and Harvard and Yale and Brown and Brandeis, and they could go to all the book smart they want. But if they don't have passion to match up with the knowledge, the passionate person, more times than not, will beat them in the race called life. So that's the reason I don't bowl, and that's the reason I'm not married.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
Must be the shoes. Are you a bowler, by the way? Brad, Jose,
Oh, yeah.
you guys, you are? You bowl?
I hate bowling.
Oh, yeah.
Jose, you hate bowling?
Yeah.
I do, too. I don't know what. And it's not a knock on people who bowl. It's just. The only thing I like about bowling is the French fries.
And
that's pretty much it.
Can't
You know?
go to the bowling alley.
You got to eat at a bowling alley. They got good food. They got good French fries and the split dogs with the onions and the cheese on it and the chili. I'll go and watch people bowl, but not in my
Favorite
wheelhouse.
part of bowling? The beer.
The beer. Do you think that there would be horse racing or dog racing or high lie if there wasn't alcohol and gambling involved? I mean, really? Have you been to the dog races? Have you been to the high life frontons and what? Just look at all the people that are sitting there with a cold one. You'll go, oh, that's why this is popular. 800-449-8255 is the number. Peter Suderman from Reason Magazine at the bottom of the hour. We're going to talk about Eric Holder stepping down and Obama administration trying to get journalists to write what the White House wants them to write, editing their stories to fit what the Obama administration wants the message to be. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer a little bit later in the program. You on the show anytime, 800-449-8255. Most bizarre conversations between Brad and Jose and I about one of our callers and how you pronounce his or her name. Like, D-A-W-N. Dawn. No, they're saying Dawn. No,
Dawn.
It's not Dawn, it's Dawn. How do you say it, Brad?
It's dawn.
No, it's Dawn.
No, it's not. It's break of dawn.
Break of dawn.
You don't pronounce the W.
How do you say O?
W.
It's dawn, D-A-W-N, like dawn, morning has broken, dawn, and evening.
I got
right?
A baby deer.
Right, how do you,
What's a baby deer called? What's a baby deer called?
Bambi.
No, it's a fawn. It's a fawn, right?
A fawn.
It's not a fawn.
It's a fawn. I'm from Brooklyn. It's a fawn.
It's a fawn, like dawn.
How do you say Orange?
Orange.
Orange.
No, that would be an A.
All right, well, we're going to find out if the caller on line 3 is a guy or a girl named Don or Dawn.
Is it Dawn or Dawn?
Hello, caller. Welcome to the show.
Dawn. D-A-W-N. It's spelled Dawn.
Dawn. Thank you, Dawn. See, Dawn knows her own name, guys. So stop with the Don. It's Dawn. Thanks for holding, Dawn. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm 48, and I've never been married. And the only reason I have never been married is because I can't find anybody out there that's worth marrying right now. I mean, I'm stuck in a little place here in Illinois, and I have not traveled that much. And
right.
As soon as I get out, if I find somebody, I will marry him, maybe. But whenever I was in school, I'd never planned on getting married anyway.
Right. But was it like when you were growing up as a young girl, wasn't it always like, you have the fairy tale wedding and you meet the Prince Charming and then, you get the white picket fence home and you live happily ever after? Wasn't that kind of like, right?
No, I never got that.
Never got that?
I come from a family with 5 kids, 4 boys and 1 girl. I was the only girl.
Right.
And I always ended up playing football, basketball, baseball, anything like that. But, no, it's just something that if you don't find anybody that you want, then...
Don't settle.
That's right.
Right? Don't settle. But aren't the guys, Dawn, aren't the guys today squishy? I mean, a lot of guys, they've gotten soft. They spend more time in the mirror, in front of the mirror than the women do.
They do. When you're driving down the road, you see more guys sitting there combing their hair in the rearview mirror than you ever see with women doing that.
Right. And they're putting all that moussey gel crap in their hair, and they're combing it with a fork. And they're going, and they have like a hair chart to make it, with that just must look. Like, it's all, it has to be like not combed, but combed. And it's like mani-pedis for men. And, it's like there's been like a role reversal. There's really something that's just a little bit bizarro that's going on out there. And I'm with you on this. I like the fact that you don't settle Dawn, D-A-W-N. And maybe you'll find one day you're Don. Delta Dawn and Don. There you go. I mean, that's perfect for you. 48. You're halfway to 96, Dawn. There's still plenty of time.
But I won't live to be that long, so.
Why not?
I've already suffered 1 major stroke, so.
Oh, okay. Well, you sound good.
That at the age of 30, but that's long gone, so.
Well, you sound like you bounced back pretty well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I have.
All right. Well, go get in your car and go into town and go tackle a dude. I'm not looking for Mr. Right. I'm looking for Mr. Right now.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Dawn. I appreciate you. Hang in there. I appreciate the phone call. 800-449-8255. She'd be a hoot to have her beer with, wouldn't she? Do you think she bowls? She sounds like a bowler.
Yeah, I'm thinking she's a bowler.
Right?
Probably,
She's a bowler?
Probably 300 bowler.
300 bowler. Like, as soon as you bowl 300, you might as well stop, right? You never bowl again.
Then you got to go for the series. You got to go for the 900.
Why? Isn't the goal of bowling to bowl 300?
It's to bowl 300 a lot.
No, it's to bowl 300. It's a perfect game, right? So as soon as you have perfection, why would you want to exceed perfection? That's like when people go say, hey, how you doing today? I go, almost perfect. And they go, oh, not perfect? No, you got nothing to look forward to. Right? If there's always that little margin that you got to keep edging towards, it's like losing weight. If you're, Fatty McFatterson and you're 50 pounds overweight, the first 25, 30 are easy. It's then when it starts to get a little closer to your target weight that it gets a little more difficult because the easy weight comes off first. Bowling 300. As soon as you bowl 300, stop. What's next? That's kind of my philosophy. That's why I don't bowl. Peter Suderman, Reason Magazine, when we get back. Great piece at Reason about Obama promising to be the most transparent administration and president in history, but he's got some interesting examples of where the administration has attempted to get journalists to change their stories so that it's more, better looking for the administration. Stick with us.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show. Jerry Doyle Show.
I'm thinking that President Obama, his hoax person, Josh Earnest, and others in the administration are fans of the TV show Scandal. I was watching a couple episodes of that over the weekend, and there was one in particular where was it Kerry Washington? Is that the gal who plays the lead on that show, Scandal? She was on with the networks, phone after phone after phone, because the VP was having a photo op that was better than what the president was having as far as optics was going. And she was screaming, "Don't do this to me, don't do this to me. A split screen with the vice president? Really, really, really?" And she was trying to convince all the networks to do what she wanted to do to make the president look better in this election cycle, where the VP would get an advantage. And eventually all the screens that she was staring at went boom, 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 boom. And they all had full screens of the VP. And she was crushed. But that's kind of how the message is massaged and manipulated today, especially with regard to how the administration is trying to get reporters to edit what they file with the White House press pool. Joining us on the program, great piece up for him at Reason.com, where he's the senior editor, Peter Suderman. Mr. Suderman, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, as always.
It's interesting. I mean, let me start off with a little devil's advocate here. Can you blame them for trying to do what it is that they're doing, to craft an image, to preserve the optics, or to present something in a better light?
I absolutely think you can blame the administration in this case, not necessarily in every case of image management, but in this case where they are interfering with the process of reporting on the White House. They are trying to edit or demand changes to reports that have been filed by reporters for other reporters to use in telling people what's going on at the White House. This is as if the White House has a representative in the newsroom of the Washington Post or the New York Times or other major news outlets, somebody who is reading things before they go to press and saying, no, don't publish that. And that is not how it's supposed to work. That's just not how it's supposed to work. That's why the White House Correspondents Association is protesting in this case, why the White House Correspondents Association has protested previously over the White House's attempt to restrict photos of the president and of the administration. I don't think it's acceptable or defensible at all.
You say in the piece, Times national security reporter James Risen said that the current administration was, quote, the greatest enemy of press freedom that we have encountered in at least a generation, and suggested that the administration threatens reporters who do not pursue acceptable stories.
That's right. This is something that we have seen and heard about a kind of a surprising amount from an administration that in some ways is so cozy and so close to a lot of the national political media, especially the New York Times has really been fairly vocal about protesting, about suggesting how bothered they are by the approach from this administration. It's not just national security reporter James Risen. It's also folks like former Times executive editor Jill Abramson, who has described the White House, this White House, as the most secretive White House that I have ever been involved in covering. That's a quote. And specifically, when she said that, she also noted, she was there for Reagan, she was there for Bush. So this is a Democratic administration that she's saying is worse than two of the more recent Republican administrations, two of the administrations that were accused of heavily stage managing, of being oppositional with the press. And she's saying that they're worse, and that is something that I think there are not enough journalists who are saying this, But certainly, if you talk to journalists off the record, you hear it quite a bit, and you do hear this sort of thing increasingly in public from major journalistic institutions and outlets.
You talk about an instance with the Post reporter David Nakamura, where he was juxtaposing a speech Obama had given 2 days earlier lauding freedom of the press with the administration's decision to limit access to the presidential photo ops on a trip. And you say that Josh Earnest flagged this and considered the comparison unfair, asked him to take it out, and after an argument, you say, the reporter acquiesced. Why would the reporter acquiesce if it's other than access? That I'm afraid that if I don't acquiesce, then when it comes time to ask a question, he's not going to call on me.
So, that is what is reported in the Washington Post by and that is what David Nakamura told the another reporter who works for the Washington Post about his experience. And I honestly, I can speculate on why he might have done that, but I don't know for sure. But as you say, the control point is access. And the White House has been notoriously stingy about access, about providing information, providing scoops, about even just providing, sort of basic run-of-the-mill comments on stories. You noted what James Risen has said, which is that they really have pushed back on people, have attempted to go after folks who are not pursuing the kinds of stories that they think are acceptable. And so reporters know this, and they know that their jobs are threatened by their ability to by loss of access. And if the White House is going to play that card, then that's something that they have to think about. And they shouldn't have to. And in fact, what I think we need are more stories like this, where it's made clear exactly what the White House is doing and how it is managing the press, attempting to manage its own coverage. It's one thing for the White House to be controlling the setups on its events, or how the president looks in official photographs, that sort of thing. I think that's all perfectly reasonable, but they're not supposed to have any control. They're not even supposed to attempt to control the reports by the national press on what the White House is doing. And what's especially weird is that, or noticeable maybe I should say, is that in many of these cases, it's not the stuff that they're going after is actually relatively small details. It's not big deal stuff. And what that kind of shows you, I think, is how aggressive they've been and how obsessive they are with managing every little tiny detail, even with stuff that you would kind of think shouldn't matter all that much. But that's how aggressive they are about this.
Like you say that one reporter was asked to remove a mention of Michelle Obama's workout. I mean, she's all about, the Let's Move campaign. She's all about healthy eating. She's all about getting kids outside running around, tying in with the NFL Play 60. So you would think that would be something that would how could that possibly be perceived or optically looked at as something negative or not fitting the agenda of the administration?
I mean, you want to, maybe you can make the argument that this is personal time, that it's that the First Lady is off limits somehow, and yet this is the sort of, as you point out, this is the sort of thing that she is known for. It's not something that makes her look bad. Is anybody surprised or bothered in any way? I mean, she works out. People work out. That's something that we want people to do. And if anything, makes her a better role model for the initiatives that she has pushed and been good on. And here's seems like a weird thing to go after, but that's how this White House has operated.
And here's another one. Many people, especially on the right, have painted Obama as cold and calculating and detached and not interested, and that he's above it all. Another reporter was asked to delete details of the president presenting a longtime reporter with a candlelit dessert on her final trip with the president. I mean, wouldn't that be something where you go, hey, we may have gone back and forth on some stuff and blah, 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 but I just wanted you to know that, I respect you and I appreciate your work. And, for the president to do that, to me, those are the details that really kind of reveal more about a person than a canned stump speech or some presidential address on the nightly news.
I think that's right. And again, it it's hard to come up with a reason why the White House would go after a reporter's, what a reporter has filed here for these little details, would attempt to delete them, would make any effort at all. You sort of in some ways understand the one where they object to the comparison. You mentioned this earlier. They objected to a kind of a comparison that was, made between President Obama saying he was in favor of freedom of the press, and at the same time, this was right after the administration had limited presidential photo ops, right? And so that's kind of a telling comparison. You understand it doesn't exactly look great for the president. You understand why they'd go after it, although, again, in that case, it's kind of revealing that they didn't like the way the press was saying that they weren't press-friendly, and so they went after the press for saying that. I mean, it's sort of ridiculously perfect.
But you know what? This administration that doesn't appear to care about the optics after giving some comments about the horrific beheading and then right to the golf course, you would have to think that would be where something like a candlelit dessert to a reporter or Michelle Obama's workout would be inconsequential, because if the optics mattered that much, you would have to think there would be other things that were blatantly bad optically for this president, for this administration, that seem to be pushed aside, but yet these, as you call them, generally pretty trivial events seem to be very important to them. Another one that you point out is that another reporter was asked to delete an account of an Obama appearance on The Tonight Show. It's The Tonight Show. It's Jimmy Fallon. It's 11:35 at night. You would think that would be something that wouldn't be problematic for the administration, but it seems as if they're focusing on the little things, and the bigger optics are the ones that are escaping them.
Well, certainly they have a problem with a lot of the bigger picture optics. I guess I think one of the things that this brings up is the question of what we're not hearing about, whether it's from press poll reports or whether it's from other types of negotiations that go on between the big news outlets and the White House. And this is something that we know happens. We know that, and particularly with national security stories, a lot of the details that we see and hear about are essentially negotiated between the big reporting, the big news outlets, and the White House, and that they will go back and forth for weeks or months, and the administration will make claims that, oh no, you can't report that because it would threaten national security, and in many cases, the papers go ahead and report it anyway, and we find out that that's not true. And in some cases, they hold off, and you find out that what the administration said was not true.
Right.
And so the fact that they are going after these small details and that they are making an effort in those instances does make you wonder what else is being kept, where else they are making an effort to keep reporters from reporting things that they know.
Peter Suderman with us on the program, senior editor at Reason Magazine, talking about his latest Their most transparent administration ever demands edits to reports filed by the White House press pool. I want to talk to you about that for a second, about the White House press pool. You say here in your piece, journalists who cover the White House say Obama's press aides have demanded and received changes in press pool reports before the reports have been disseminated to other journalists. Now, it seems as if the administration is really working the skinny end of the funnel. And it's problematic that so few have so little access to so much information, but then it gets disseminated out the fat end of the funnel after they hand it out to everybody else. And when you have so few people that are listening to the president and questioning the president and making notes about what he's saying, isn't that problematic? Shouldn't we have more people and less press pool reports that are basically a fax of a fax of a fax of a fax of a story that one or two reporters get to file?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's how the Washington Post describes the press poll, and that's exactly right. That's sort of how it works. Is that it is a report filed by a single reporter on what is going on with the White House, usually with the president, and then it's disseminated to the rest of the White House press pool. And so that's part of the problem, is that the White House is the choke point and that's something that the Correspondents Association is trying to get around. But yes, there is this larger problem of access and of number of people who are able to pursue these stories, and the White House makes efforts, takes steps to limit that as well. And it's very hard in many cases for reporters to get access to senior administration officials, to the president in any kind of way that's not filtered through the press room or the communications department. Often it's hard to get any kind of access to those folks except on the daily press conferences where they don't, where they frequently will not give you much information, where everyone is getting the exact same thing. It's not the kind of one-on-one conversation where stuff is actually revealed. And this is something that the reporters complain about an awful lot, is just the management of their movement, of who they talk to, any kind of access within the White House. And it is pretty consistent that they will say that it is worse under Obama than under any recent president.
And plus, that familiarity breeds contempt to a certain degree. I mean, that's why I don't hang out with politicians. I don't talk with politicians except when they come on the program, and then I call them on their BS. I don't know their wives or husbands. I don't know their kids. I don't know what civic involvement they're involved in. So I have an ability to be objective in what it is that I'm doing and talking with them about, and to hold them accountable, because I have to go, well, his kid just had open heart surgery, so I got to give him a pass today. I don't have to give anybody a pass because I don't know them, so that means I don't like them or dislike them. I just call them on whatever it is that they're saying, doing, not doing, or should be saying. And there's a certain separation of church and state that allows me to be objective without having to make subjective edits because of certain things that I'm privy to.
I think that separation is very valuable in a lot of cases, and there's certainly a big advantage to it. I will stick up a little bit for the kind of reporting that is based on knowing people very well and very closely. It's often, in those cases, that's often the only way to get information out of people at all. And so, I think that there's room for reporting and journalism on both ends of the spectrum. The problem at the White House, in a lot of cases, is that they have neither. They're not able to sort of step outside and question people in an unfamiliar way, in a not personally friendly way, and they're also not able to create the contacts and sort of the friendships that allow for a smooth information flow between reporters and sources, which is, like I said, the way that a lot of information does get out. And so they're stuck doing nothing. They're just sort of transcribing what Josh Earnest says on any given day, and that's what we get. And that's the only thing that we can see. And then, as it turns out, that Earnest gets to edit some of those reports, or at least tries to edit some of those reports.
Trumpeting from the skinny end of the funnel. Peter Suderman, thanks for joining us on the program. I got to get out here. Mr. Suderman's the senior editor at Reason Magazine. Check out his latest there at Reason.com. Most transparent administration ever demands edits to reports filed by White House press pools. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show.
I got an email from James in Virginia, one of our listeners on the program, and he says, Jerry, thank you for putting a foot in my ass. I'm ripping the Band-Aid off. I'm going to address my tax problem. Good. Remember we talked about yesterday, ripping the Band-Aid off instead of just peeling it back? If you're behind on your taxes, I hope it goes away, I hope it goes away, I hope it goes away. Rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it. How do you do it? Our tax solution sponsor here on the program, Optima Tax Relief. America was built. New beginnings, fresh starts. Rip the Band-Aid off. Get rid of the IRS breathing down your neck. Going after your bank accounts. Going after your wages. Going after your home. Calling you at your business. Calling you at your house. Stop. Fresh Start Initiative. Official IRS program can significantly reduce your tax burden, your tax debt. If you qualify, you can save thousands. Tens of thousands. Optima Tax Relief, they know all the ins and outs of the Fresh Start Initiative. They'll be happy to explain it all to you when you give them a call. Having Optima Tax Relief in your corner can be a game changer. It's no wonder they have an A rating from the Better Business Bureau. Don't wait till it's too late. Call them for your free consultation. 1-800-714-9259. 1-800-714-9259. 1-800-714-9259. Optima Tax Relief. Be like James in Virginia. Rip the Band-Aid off and get to it. Good for you, James.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
A lot of these people can survive if they get proper care quickly, and we can stop the epidemic and let it burn itself out if we can isolate everybody that's infected.
This epidemic is going to get worse before it gets better, but right now, the world still has an opportunity to save countless lives. We are going to keep leading in this effort.
You are someone with a history of domestic violence yourself. You've even been to jail for it. Why should fans root for you?
Everything has been allegations. Nothing has been proven. That's life.
That girl who broke your heart in high school is sorry. She realizes now that she let you slip through her fingers. As it turns out, you were the best thing that ever happened to her.
Jerry Doyle Show.
All righty, you rambunctious little bambinos. Back in the box. Lots to get to. Hour 3 of the big show. JD here. Good to have you on board. Let's tee it up and see how long and straight we can hit it. So shamalama ding dong. Didn't the Ryder Cup start today? Speaking of teeing it up and seeing how long and straight we can hit it. Did the Ryder Cup
It's starting. Let me see if it started today.
I believe that I saw a headline as I was perusing the internets, which is a series of tubes, that the U.S. was in trouble on the first day of the Ryder Cup. Golf. You know what the difference between a professional golfer and an amateur golfer is? A professional golfer can play 18 holes without a beer. That's pretty much it. That's what it all boils down to.
Unless it's John Daly.
Unless it's John Daly, who I heard was consuming a minimum of a case of beer a day. What was that story we had up on Epic Times? Gerard Depardieu.
14 bottles of wine.
It's impossible. Don't you think? Because he's French?
He's a big boy. He is not in the slender
14
category.
bottles of wine a day. That's just
I don't think he's keeping. I think he's keeping a loose count. I don't think he's got a tally.
He probably loses count after 3.
How
many did you have yesterday?
12.
14. What? 14. Okay, we're going with that. That's the story. I thought I saw that up there on Epic Times. Gerard Depardieu consuming 14. That's expensive. French wine, not cheap.
That's a serious hangover.
That's wow.
He never has a hangover. He's never sober.
Yeah.
That was my Uncle Larry, one of the classic advertising salesmen. He was like the Mad Men of Mad Men, back when it was the advertising age of the 50s, 60s, and 70s in New York City. He said, when you stop getting hangovers, worry. I go, why? He goes, because you're always drunk. He was a character, man. He was one of those madmen. Whenever he'd go on a cruise, he'd always order the fish. And he would always complain about the fish, that the fish was frozen. Of course it's frozen. But my Uncle Larry thought that they had a line off the back of the ship, and they were just fishing just for him, so they could present him with some nice fresh Dover sole in the torrid waters of the Atlantic. He was a character. He sold something like 93% of all of the advertising for Lorillard in a couple of years. And they had, I don't know how many sales reps, advertising reps at the firm. Dozens. And he had one table in one restaurant on 61st and 1st that he went to all the time. And he took his clients there, and everybody went there, and everybody knew Larry, and everybody buffed Larry out. And he said he never talked about business. He always talked about something that he knew that would be of interest to them. And the assumption that he had in his mind was, of course, we're going to do business, but why don't we just, have a nice meal and have a nice conversation in the meantime? Guy just knew how to sell. And then he was telling me about this wine that I would enjoy. And I said, okay, what is it? And he said it was like Chateau Petrus something, I forget what the year was. And he goes, and you can call my guy at this place in Manhattan, and he'll take care of you. He said, just get a bottle and, see if you like it. But I think you're going to like it. So me, I go, oh, really? A bottle? I don't think so. So I called up and I ordered a case. I don't know how many bottles are in a case. 12? I guess there was 12 bottles in a case?
12
bottles in a case of wine. So I called him. I said, yeah, Larry Timmons told me to call, and my name's Jerry Doyle, and I'm going to get a case of that Chateau Petrus 1980, whatever it was. Great. Come down and pick it up tomorrow. Fantastic. So I went down there expecting to get a case of nice wine. And I think if I remember the price, it was something like $360 a bottle. And the guy goes, okay, that'll be $4,000. And I was like, huh? Where's the Boone's Farm? Do you have any Ripple? Oh, my God. And then I called Uncle Larry up and I go, why don't you tell me it was $360 a bottle? He goes, just know what you're doing. So do a little research. And he was always teaching like these sales lessons along the way. He was just a very cool guy. He's not with us any longer, but he moved to California out of New York. And in New York, you never drive. And he called me up and he said, I'm moving to California. I need you to buy me a car so that when Dorothy and I, that was his wife, get there, I want the car in the garage so that I have something to drive right away. I said, okay, what kind of car do you want? He goes, a heavy car. I go, what? He goes, a heavy car. I go, well, what do you need a heavy car for? He goes, just get me a heavy car. I go, it doesn't snow out there. It's not like you have to worry about the sleet and the ice and the snow. He goes, I just want a heavy car. So I said, all right, so it's a heavy car. I'm thinking, heavy car, what's a heavy car? Cadillac's a heavy car. So I bought him a Cadillac. And he said, you just buy it, and then, I'll pay you back. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I go in, I buy a Cadillac, and I put it in his garage. And then he gets to California. The movers are there. He gets all set up. He calls me. He goes, thanks very much. Love the car. I go, great. And he said, well, just come up next weekend, and, we'll square everything up. And okay. And he said, spend the night, and, we'll go out to dinner, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. So he takes me for a ride in his Cadillac. And then I came to understand why he needed a heavy car. Because Larry, when he was driving at 50 miles an hour, when he would get to a turn or a roundabout, like a circle, he did not adjust his speed. Like those little yellow signs were merely suggestions to other people, not him. And the reason he needed a heavy car, he goes, because those, I can't say what he said, what kind of cars they are, but it's 3 letters, begins with a J. He goes, those cars, he says, they just tip over when you go to make a turn. He goes, they just up on 2 wheels. He said, I can't drive. That's why I need a heavy car. And I drove with him for the first and only time I would ever drive with this guy, because when we hit this circle, this roundabout, which is supposed to slow people down and get them to yield so that he can go off into the different directions, not a mile per hour came off his speed, and we hit this turn. And this Cadillac was leaning. I thought this thing was going to tip over. We got the car back in the garage, and I was like, oh, thank God. I'll never have to drive with Uncle Larry again. But just an absolute classic. What did you put up? This Gerard Depardieu thing is mind-blowing?
Yeah, I'm reading the article. It's from sofilm.co.uk.
Yeah.
He asks about wine. He says, when I'm bored, I drink. Apart from occasional compulsory moments of abstinence, like after going bypass surgery 5 times.
5 times he had bypass surgery?
5 times. And also because of, quote, cholesterol.
He's no quitter.
He said he has to be careful, but he's not going to die. He has lots of energy. He says, but if I ever start drinking, I can't drink like a normal person. I can absorb 12, 13, 14 bottles per day, but I'm never totally drunk. Just a little buzzed. All you need is a 10-minute nap, and voila.
And then another bottle of wine?
Yes, a slurp of rosé, and I feel fresh as a daisy.
This is like him. 10-minute nap. consume. 10-minute nap. I mean, 14, that's 140 minutes of naps on 14 bottles between each one. That's a little over 2 hours. I mean, that's a pace, man. 14 bottles a day. So he's not drinking right now. But if he does, he drinks 14 bottles a day.
Yeah, he's not drinking because of cholesterol and stuff. And maybe he's between bypass surgeries.
Speaking of, he says he drinks when he's bored. Did you see that Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson's company that's going to take people into space for $250,000 a ride? They partnered up with Grey Goose as one of their sponsors. And they asked why Grey Goose and Virgin Galactic went together. And because the guy who's the head of marketing for a Grey Goose said, vodka's really good when you're bored. Okay, I guess that makes sense.
Vodka cures boredom.
Vodka cures boredom, and 14 bottles of wine a day cures Gerard Depardieu's insomnia. Whew, man, that's just a ton of stuff. Hey, a couple of epic fails of the day for you today. State Farm Insurance Company has dropped actor Rob Schneider from the ads because of his anti-vaccine views. State Farm has been pressured to drop Rod Schneider from its insurance ads over the actor's controversial views against vaccination. Schneider went on social media to suggest that his First Amendment rights had been violated. State Farm, that's my insurance company. You know, I did a lot of voiceover work. I was the voice of TGI Fridays and John Deere and AT&T and General Motors. Huh?
Don't forget Oral-B.
Oral-B. And there's like it'd be like me doing Nothing Runs Like a Deer. That was one of the ads that I did for John Deere. I did the tags, all the tags on the national spots. Nothing runs like a deer. And then me like going on there and just going, I think anybody that cuts their grass or doesn't let nature take over is a fool, destroying the planet. John Deere would just go, hey, what are you doing? I mean, so I can understand. But it wasn't like he was making a comment on insurance. If that Texas upskirt law says that you have the right to hold your camera under a girl's skirt and take a picture, and that's an extension of your free speech, I would think that Rob Schneider would have the First Amendment right to have his comments known about what some people say is a very controversial issue, which is vaccinating your kids. So epic fail, in my opinion, there for State Farm for not letting him speak his mind. And the epic fail of the day on steroids is New York Mayor Bill de Blasio. Did you see when he dropped Staten Island Chuck? They were Staten Island Chuck, February 2nd, the winter weather prognosticator. Groundhog Chuck. They handed it to the mayor, and the mayor had these giant yellow gloves on so that he wouldn't get scratched up or bit. And they handed Chuck off to the mayor, who's about 6'5", and the mayor kind of got a little wobbly with Chuck and dropped Chuck from 6 feet, and Chuck hit the deck. And then they picked Chuck up, and they petted him, and they made it look like everybody laughed. It was a photo opportunity, blah, 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 blah. Well, a week later, Chuck dies of internal injuries that they say were directly related to being dropped by the mayor. According to the necropsy of Chuck, the Staten Island Zoo said Chuck was actually Charlotte, a female imposter, and died from acute internal injuries, falling nearly 6 feet during the Groundhog Day photo op. Instead of revealing the loss, the zoo, which gets half of its $3.5 million in annual funding from the city of New York, told their staff to keep the mayor's office in the dark about the animal's fate. They told a few zoo supporters, but they claimed that the groundhog had died of natural causes. Epic fail there. The zoo doesn't make public that it has stand-in groundhogs to protect the groundhog brand. Epic fail there for the zoo. And can you blame the mayor? I mean, they didn't tell him. They kept it from the mayor. They're trying to pin this on the mayor. The Republicans are trying because he's a Democrat and he killed a groundhog. But this is just like, it's an epic fail. All these photo ops. And the reason he had those giant yellow gloves on was because this is the same Chuck, really Charlotte, who bit Mayor Bloomberg back in 2009. So, epic fail on the part of the zoo, the Staten Island Zoo, who went to cover up the death of Chuck, a.k.a. Charlotte, who died of internal injuries after Mayor Bill de Blasio dropped him and or her during a photo op.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
These politicians. Let me flip a pancake. Let me hold a groundhog. Let me kiss a baby. I got a good idea. Why don't you lower taxes? 800-449-8255 is the number. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer is going to join us at the bottom of the hour to give us the latest on our war against ISIS. Are we fighting to win or not to lose? Quick break. Stick with us. Right back.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
Here's the epic spin of the day. Now, you know, John Kerry is telling the United Nations and we, the people of the United States, that there's this broad coalition that is fighting side by side with us against ISIS. Now, so far, officials have confirmed 198 strikes against ISIS targets in Iraq and 33 strikes against ISIS in Syria. Yesterday, when they were targeting the refineries in Syria, fighter jets from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates flew alongside U.S. aircraft, hitting 12 locations. That's some spin right there. They didn't say that the fighter jets from Saudi Arabia and the UAE were the ones that lit up those 12 locations, but they flew alongside our U.S. F-16s and F-22s. What were they doing? Waving? Giving a thumbs up after they lit it up? Hey, good job. Oh, look at that. Don't you like... I mean, if that's not spin, because they're trying to tell us that all of these countries have signed on. Look, we're the big swinging force in Syria and in Iraq. We're the ones that are getting it done. But I guess if you can show a photo op, which they did, of a couple of Saudi fighter pilots sitting in the cockpit with the canopy open. Now, if the canopy's open, one of two things is taking place. Either they're ejecting and they caught it in a freeze frame, or they're on the ground in a hangar, which they were. But they're flying side by side with us in the epic spin of the day, and it's ambiguous just enough so that you might think that the fighter jets from Saudi Arabia and the UAE lit up those oil refineries in Syria. Epic spin of the day. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer with the facts when we get back. Stick with me.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show. Jerry Doyle Show.
Look, folks, we're lighting up ISIS, and it's about damn time. We're hearing reports that yesterday we hit ISIS headquarters, a training camp, oil refineries. We're going after the Do-Re-Mi. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers. But let's be honest about who's doing this. It's us. Now, we were talking about how they're spinning this. Yesterday, fighter jets from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates flew alongside U.S. aircraft, hitting 12 locations. That according to Navy spokesman Rear Admiral John Kirby. Now, flying alongside is moral support, thumbs up, attaboy, attagirl. We're the ones that are doing this. And John Kerry can spin this all he wants into saying we have this broad coalition. But we're doing it, and they're along for the ride. But the question is, I keep hearing from people like Senator Marco Rubio, is that what we're doing is not going to work. Eventually, we're going to have to put boots on the ground. True or not? Joining us on the program to talk about what it is we're doing and whether or not it's working, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, New York Times bestselling author. You know his book, Operation Dark Heart, senior fellow of the London Center for Policy Research, and a contributor at EpicTimes.com. Tony, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Jerry, good to be on. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, Tony. I appreciate it. What about this broad coalition? You know, I keep hearing about Bahrain, and I keep hearing about, but we're pretty much the ones that are doing it, right?
Well, there is one broad. I saw a major in an airplane. Oh, it's a joke. Only joking. No, there's no broad coalition. There are 5 Arab nations who are kind of coming along for a ride. Yes, and I'm only making half a joke about that because a Bahraini major, female major, was in an aircraft escorting our boys into attack. So that's it. We do not have a broad coalition. We have a series of nations who have begrudgingly signed up with us, and along that same line, we don't have the British, we don't have the French, we don't have any, and we don't have the Turkish, which are key and necessary allies and friends that we must have on the front line to work with us on what's going on. And let me tell you something, another country missing, which is a key ally, is Egypt. And boy, I saw a picture today of President Obama sitting across from President el-Sisi, and that must have been one heck of an awkward moment. And President Obama was asked directly about the relationship with Egypt, and he was kind of at a loss for words, and John Kerry just kind of looked down. So, Gary, there is no broad coalition. You're talking here about basically our Air Force carrying the burden as it always does. And as much as I agree with you, we've bloodied their nose. We need to be doubling and tripling down at this point, because one of the first things they've done now is they've started releasing some of the hostages because they figured out, my God, they're serious. They're really bombing us. So if that's the indicator of the real mettle of these guys, then again, it's time to really get serious and really weigh into them.
Belgian foreign minister said that his country's parliament will weigh a request for 6 of its fighter jets to take part in the bombing campaign. David Cameron, the British prime minister, he said he's recalling parliament tomorrow, Friday, to, quote, secure approval for the United Kingdom to participate in the Iraq air campaign. As you point out, Brit not in, French not in, Turks not in, Egypt not in. Didn't we send something like 70 F-16s to Egypt or some? We sent a bunch of F-16s over to Egypt. Right. What was the purpose of that? Was that just a financial, a balance sheet accounting deal, or are they actually going to put them to use?
You're making my point exactly. This is what I've been discussing with members of Congress, with the staffs. As a matter of fact, Bud McFarland and I were talking about this on a conference call. Jerry, we have invested heavily in these moderate Islamic republics, and they have been well equipped. They've been well trained, as we've seen in the media the last couple of days. We've had the Saudi world prince flying an F-15 that they've gotten from us. The bottom line is that each one of these militaries have been trained and equipped over decades. This is not like we're just throwing, we didn't vet them and throw them a bunch of weapons over a 10-month period. These are militaries who send their officers to our academies. They come and work with us on exercises, and right now is the time we should be calling in our chits to say, hey, now's the time to come with us to do this, not to have a handful of Arab airplanes flying in formation with us while we drop bombs. That's not the answer. So,
well, here, just to that point, Tony, if I could just jump in here for a second. Yeah. And people say, well, you have to give it some breathing room, like a fine wine. You have to let it breathe. We have to figure out how we're going to incorporate the Brits and the French and the Turks and the Egyptians, into our air combat operations. Well, as you know, I live in Vegas and not too far from Nellis Air Force Base, and I'm on the outbound to the practice area, to the bombing range, and they have red flag exercises here all the time. So those pilots and those nations are here on a regular basis training for these kinds of missions. You would think that when it comes time to execute the mission, that they'd be all in.
This is part of the problem. Over the past 6 years, this White House has squandered what I would call soft power and influence. As much as they talk a great game, Jerry, about how they're going to make us more relevant and more liked in the world, they haven't. And the very things which the Bush administration did, and you and I have both been heavy critics of the Bush administration, and I hope your audience remembers that, they did get a few things right. One of the things they got right was trying to include as many allies as often as they can in a real and precise way, that they're actually doing things with us. I was in Afghanistan working with our allies. There were people showing up to actually conduct combat operations with us, and it was a very fine interoperability that was established. We don't have that for two reasons. First, John Kerry alienated most of the Arab nations we're now trying to pull in by his comments about the Bush administration's, basically buying them off, accusing these Arab nations of being bought off by the Bush administration during the last war. So a lot of people just don't like him showing up. Secondly, when you look at the actual number of folks who are now involved, there's a great deal of trust, as a trust deficit. You know, when you're in a relationship, Jerry, you've not been there where there's a trust deficit. Well, every one of these nations has a trust deficit with our president that is not going to be overcome anytime soon.
Well, you know, I was looking at how there was this meeting on September 11th with John Kerry and King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. And Abdullah was already ticked off at Obama for calling off strikes against the regime of Syria's Assad. And at the palace, Kerry requested the assistance, including airstrikes. And King Abdullah said this, quote, "We will provide any support you need." And that kind of set things in motion for what we're doing in Syria now. But this was a whole lot of behind-the-scenes work because the Saudis wanted to get a new commitment from us, a fresh commitment from this president and from John Kerry, that they would beef up training for the rebels, the demise of which the Saudis see as a top priority. But they're afraid that if they gave Obama or Kerry any wiggle room, that they would start something and then find a way to get out of it, or to go to a secondary or a tertiary operation that would not be what Saudi Arabia and King Abdullah signed on for.
That's correct. And let me add to what you're saying, because you're exactly right. These people, this administration, John Kerry, acted at the last minute because they were forced to. And let me be clear for you and your audience, Jerry, the intelligence indicating that these guys are growing goes back 2 years. I've talked to several high-level sources, to one just this evening, that confirmed that the Pentagon's been pushing information over to the president along this line for years, not just months, years, and it's been ignored. People like John Brennan, who somehow have a complete misunderstanding or purposeful misunderstanding of the caliphate that was coming, played it all down. And Jim Clapper, Jim, we have a 100-watt intelligence community, and Jim Clapper is about a 40-watt bulb in that community. So we've got people at the top who don't understand what's going on fundamentally. You've got diplomats who do not have any credibility with the people we're trying to deal with, and you put it all together into the situation where there is no credibility within this administration that they're going to do anything necessary to actually go about this. And one last political point. The reason the president did the bombing the other night when he did, I believe, was for political drama, by the fact he was showing up at the UN the next day. It would have been far more effective, Jerry, that he would have bombed the very night he announced that he was going to bomb. He gave the ISIS guys a full, I think, by my count, about 10 days to get ready for us coming. So this is where I think you and I would agree. You hammer them hard. You don't tell them when you're coming. So I think this was all done on a timeline based on political drama and theater rather than on military necessity.
When you look at what it is that we're doing, and to a certain degree it is working, because, you saw ISIS step up its propaganda campaign. When the French foreign minister was addressing the lower house of parliament, they released that beheading video of that French citizen. So they're playing the psychological operations side of this and trying to get into our heads. But according, the CNN is reporting that there's an activist in Raqqa named Mahir al-Ahmad, and he said that he went to the town after the airstrikes. And he said, this is his quote, "It's the first time I didn't see ISIS in the streets, that I was able to walk around because I am wanted by them." He said, to his best estimates, 20 to 25 vehicles filled with ISIS fighters, including people he believes were senior leadership because of the level of security that was around them, left the city within hours of the attacks. I would have to say that if they're bugging town, that what we're doing is starting to work.
Yes. But we need to do more. Now, this is the time we actually get on them. Like you said, they just scattered like, you walk into your kitchen in the middle of the night, and if you have cockroaches
exactly.
Scramble up. So now's the time to send in the A-10s on the search and destroy missions as they see things, blow them up. When you get these guys on the grid square, I've said this several times, and I mean it sincerely, you send in an arc-light mission with three P-2s, and you make that, you basically churn the desert on a grid square where you see these guys. You just kind of roll the sand all over and let them be rolled over with it. We need to be more aggressive now. And this is a time for again, the president. And by the way, Pentagon has the plans for this. They know how to do this. This is not something that is in any way remotely alien to them. The question now becomes is how aggressive can we get? How quickly can we do this? But then we have to follow up with a real game plan to re-insinuate diplomacy and something to go in there. We have to have some, if we defeat ISIS, which I know we can, we have to figure out what we're going to put in there in a way of governance to fill that space that they're leaving. And that's just where the strategy still lacks a complete, any sort of definition at all.
I was looking at the what I guess our Pentagon would say are our confirmed strikes so far against ISIS targets. 198 in Iraq, 33 against ISIS in Syria. I would have to think, Tony, that, and you're a Bronze Star recipient for your first of 2 combat tours in Afghanistan, so you know a lot more about this, obviously, than I do. But it just seems like 198 in Iraq and 33 in Syria since we started the campaign on Monday. Wouldn't that be something that they could do in an hour or two?
We could do that in a couple of days, if not less. No, we need to step it up. I understand completely the idea of being precise, of not killing innocent civilians. Trust me, I've been there, and I've criticized our folks for being a little bit too trigger-happy at times without a great deal of granularity of intelligence. We've had the granularity. We've had it for months. And what I would do right now is actually try to go about basically dismantling everything they can do. It's a good beginning. It's not a great beginning. It's a C+, on a scale of A to F. But I think we now need to get into the territory of actually sending in aggressively our aircraft and start prepping the battle space for the eventual battle, the ground forces. Now, you mentioned boots on the ground. They're going to be necessary, but they don't have to be ours. I've met with the Assyrians, the Iraqi Christians, and the Yazidi right here on Capitol Hill, and what they're asking for, Jerry, from our Congress is not refugee status. They want to be armed. They want to be equipped. They want to be trained to go back and retake their homes. Gee, don't you think it's better to equip the people who want to go back to their homes and retake the terrain than training uncontrollable Islamic militia? This, to me, is a no-brainer, and yet it's not getting traction with this administration. And these folks are motivated, Jerry. They want to go home. They want to go back to where they've lived for thousands of years, and yet we're not doing the right thing. We're trying to arm radicals who we don't know what they're going to do instead of arming the people who just want to go home.
But again, it to the point, and I said this last week, and some people thought I was being a little harsh, where we're more concerned. Some people in the Pentagon, some people in the State Department, some people in this administration, I do believe the president to a certain degree, is more comfortable seeing our soldiers get killed than to see civilians get whacked in Iraq and Syria. And at a certain point, I think you have to just put that to the side. This is war, and innocent women and children and men will be killed because the ISIS thugs have decided that embedding themselves in and about the civilian population in parts of Syria is a way that they will be able to garner the court of public opinion in the propaganda campaign. That is really their only chance of winning. And if they can get the propaganda campaign, you'll overcome the 16s, the 18s, the 22s, the B-1s, and the Tomahawk missiles.
That's a perception, but I think I think I'm with you on this. And I know I've talked to civilians. I've actually listened to phone calls from people, get this, Jerry, civilians who wanted us to call in fire on them because their life had become hell. That's how desperate these people are for help. They would sooner die from an airstrike from us than live with the Islamic radicals. That's how bad it is. So you're right. The president needs to get over this concern about civilian casualties, because some of these civilians would rather take the chance of being killed by our bombs than living under the constant threat of being raped or being beheaded. That's how bad it is. So it's time that they get past this concern. And plus, the people, Jerry, we have an all-volunteer force. We have signed up to do the hard things because we want to, not because we were forced to. And men and women in uniform today fully understand what's going on, what may happen, and the potential consequence and sacrifice they may have to make. That's why they keep enlisting and signing up. So this is where we have to make a maximum effort. Our problem, we've talked about this, we don't necessarily get into wars to win them anymore. That's part of our problem. We need to get into this to win it. There's a way of doing it. We need to do a combination right now of hard hitting, as many body blows to ISIS as you can do it, and then start looking at how we can bring some level of competent and effective boots on the ground in, and then looking for a long-term diplomatic civil military solution that we can all live with, which will include a long-term treaty organization type thing like NATO, with the Arab nations hopefully being led by the likes of Egypt or Jordan and Saudi Arabia at some point.
And just to clarify what our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, is saying, boots on the ground, not ours, theirs, and that's an important distinction. I got to get out, Tony, but here's the problem I have, is that come December 11th, when Congress is back after the election, and they've only authorized the funding for this through December 11th, that they're probably going to say, you know what, it's been almost 3 months, and look at the damage that we've done, and, we don't want to allocate any more money, and we don't want to really be a nation at war. I just worry that with their authorization for funding only through December 11th, that those predisposed to going wobbly are going to have the knees of a newborn calf. We'll have to see how that plays out in December, but we got to keep the pressure on them to make sure that we keep the heat on ISIS and continue to do what we're doing. Tony, thanks very much for joining us. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. We got to get out.
Thank you, sir.
Wrap it up when we get back. Stick with us.
The Jerry Doyle Show. This is the Jerry Doyle Show.
Thursday, September 25th, new shows premiering tonight. Bones, Grey's Anatomy, Parenthood on NBC, Scandal on ABC, and How to Get Away with Murder. New series on ABC. Any of those of interest to you there, Jose? No, I kind of got into Scandal a little bit when I was watching the reruns before the lead up to the launch of the season premiere tonight. So anyway, it's all good. I'm going to have that doing it tonight. Jose, did you get the latest package of Life Change Tea that I sent out? Did that come in the mail yet? You did not get that yet?
I'm still waiting, yeah.
Oh, because Brad got his. He got his yesterday, so I sent yours out. I got to make sure. Anyway, Life Change Tea, one of the sponsors here on the program. Robert Scott Bell, as we were talking about, was going to be analyzing our refrigerators, and he sent me an email. He said, "What's in the pitcher?" And I said, "Life Change Tea. That's what's in the pitcher." When I talk about this stuff, if you go in my refrigerator at any time, what I do is I take 2 bags of Life Change Tea at night. I put it in the water that's boiling. I put the lid on it. 12 hours later, wake up, boom, and I make it a gallon of this stuff. And I keep it in the refrigerator. I drink it every morning. I drink it every night. It's got tons of health benefits. And we're all about getting control of our health present and our health future. One of the ways you can do that is with Life Change Tea. You can go to their website, getthetea.com. And you can read the testimonials from other people, where it's helped from anything from sensitive teeth to weight problems to irritable bowel syndrome. And for me, who likes patterns and predictability, I'm as regular as a baby bird. Life Change Tea. Check it out, folks. It is life-changing. GetTheTea.com is the website. That's GetTheTea.com. Tomorrow's Friday, Jose, already. This week just blew by.
Just like I like it.
The less I have to think I'm listening to you, the better? Is that what you're telling me? Okay. Well, on that happy note, we'll get out for today. We'll do it tomorrow on the Friday edition of the program. Till then, folks, take care.